Yeah. And he's the one that nobody has seen in years, right? We all got the YouTube.
I used to, when conventions were on, I would always pick up Freddie on the way and we'd go. So, but that's probably been, I haven't been to a convention probably since my son was born. So that was February 19. So.
So we're live, as far as I know. I'm streaming to the Dead Pit YouTube and the WrestleManiacs Facebook.
Cool.
So simulcast tonight. High Tech Redneck. How are you guys doing? We got Pizzow on here, the YouTube sensation, if you will.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Right? Doing great. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to. It's the reunion, you know.
Yeah,
of course.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, it's. I've had a few people actually ask me about the WrestleManiacs thing and bringing it back, because Pizzow was actually with the Before podcast, which was like the precursor to WrestleManiacs and the WrestleMania, because he was on both.
Mm-hmm. Can you believe it's been almost 5 years? That is insane to me. Like, I feel like I don't even remember knowing you guys for 5 years, let alone doing that thing, which means I've known you guys way longer than that.
Time flies, man. Time flies.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, the whole YouTube thing too. Like, me and Uncle Bill was doing the retro wrestling thing or whatever. I was watching some of that stuff, and fuck, that was like some of that stuff was like 12 years ago or something. Mm-hmm. So it's just it seems like yesterday, really. But yeah, it's been a while. But tonight, since the Royal Rumble is right around the corner, which I don't think Garrett or Pizzow watches the product anymore, right? As far as the new stuff.
Sadly, no.
No, I've not watched.
That's another thing that's crazy for me that I don't, because I've been watching it since I was nonstop, pretty much. Like, I think I missed like a year almost back in like '93, and I've been watching it since probably '86. So yeah, it's been crazy that I haven't really paid too much attention since probably the end of not the WrestleMania where Becky won at the end. Like, that was like the last probably pay-per-view. Like, that's probably the last time I think that I was watching it really consistently.
It's been many years for me. I don't remember exactly when I tuned out, but it's been several years since I've watched anything. So,
well, you honestly, you haven't missed much. I think the big problem with nowadays is there's just too much stuff to watch, and it's easy to get burnt out on it. And it's really not very good, to be honest with you. I watch it anymore out of habit, and I fast forward through most of it, to be honest. But I do look forward to some of the pay-per-views. The Royal Rumble is always pretty fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll probably check that out for sure. It's crazy too, because, you know, when we were watching it, even within the last 5 years, now there's more wrestling than ever, I think, and which is interesting. But at the same time, it's like I just can't get attached to anything. Like, I think if I had to choose one thing that still I can still watch and enjoy is NXT, and I'll watch the pay-per-views of NXT, but that's about it. I haven't watched a weekly show in a while.
No, I did lie. I did watch the Rumble where Edge returned. Was that last year or the year before?
That was last year, yeah.
Last year, was it last year? Yeah, it must have been, huh?
So I did watch that one. I did watch
that one too, I gotta say.
And well, I've got a couple of people on here asking about AEW. Have you tried to watch AEW, Garrett or Pizzo?
What's up, Sean? I tried. I couldn't get into it personally. You know, and again, it could be my own fault in a way, because I didn't follow too much. Like, I haven't followed indies and stuff in a real long time. So a lot of these guys that were in AEW, like, I had no connection with at all. And I feel like they kind of threw them out there like everybody was supposed to know who these guys were. And I I just didn't. So therefore, I didn't connect with him right away. And truth be told, I am not the biggest Moxley fan. So it's kind of like as soon as he came in, I was kind of out at that point. Like I just didn't want to bother anymore.
Yeah, I've not watched it at all.
So yeah, so the last time I watched any episode, was when he first came. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like it in a way, but there's some stuff that's really stupid on it too. So it is what it is. Tony Schiavone's on there, so I enjoy listening to him call wrestling matches.
Yeah.
It brings me back.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I guess we're waiting on Freddie. But tonight we're talking about. I think a lot of people say it's the best Royal Rumble that they ever did was the 1992 edition. And it's I'll say this too, like, and I was talking to Garrett about this before. This was a weird time frame in WWF at the time. It was like they were in between the old generation and the new generation. And this Rumble in particular, I think was a lot of the wrestlers' last appearance, definitely last Royal Rumble. But yeah, I mean, some of these guys, like, I didn't even realize that they were still there at that point. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of like a mixture of the 80s and 90s WWF in one show.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but at the same time, like, too, as much as it was that transition, and you kind of saw a lot of guys this was their first real Rumble, and then you saw a lot of guys who I think this was like their last official Rumble. They actually had a pretty stacked roster at this point, I feel like, as the old guard and the new guard were kind of coming together. Like, there was just a lot of big names in this one that I feel like you don't see in a lot of Rumbles, after this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird because they had they had some of the old school sort of cartoony people, like, they had the Barbarian and the Warlord, and they had, the Berserker, us, and, people like that. But then they had, like, this was Shawn Michaels just starting off his solo thing. And so there was a lot going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of was that transitional period.
What's weird too, and I was talking to Garrett about this as well, just this time frame on the WWE network. Like, they've got, at this point on the network, they've got some primetime wrestling shows, some let's see, I think Fred finally showed up here. Freddie,
what's up?
I didn't know if Freddie still looked the same. He's in the shadows.
Yeah,
Hey, what's going on?
Where are you?
Like a wolf in the shadows over there.
The wolves always lurk in the shadows, man.
Need the Lost Boys song, Garrett. Play it in the background there.
Lost in the shadows.
Yeah.
Stand up to the night, lost in the shadows. How you doing, brother?
So
I'm all right. You?
Good, man.
I had like 5 hours of sleep this weekend, so
Why? Watching too much wrestling?
Couldn't sleep, but this show did not help.
Oh. Did you go to your TiVo and be like, I've got all these events to watch?
So, yeah, I mean, we were talking about this time frame here for the Royal Rumble 92. And what I was saying was, it's kind of like the talent during that time period was a mixture of the 80s and the 90s almost. It was I think it was one of the only pay-per-views that I can think of that was like that. Because once you got to 93 era WWF, it was pretty much all new guys. Bret was you had Bret, Yokozuna, Shawn Michaels. All those guys were kind of in the upper echelon at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was like the really last big era Royal Rumble for a while.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were just saying. Yeah, for sure. It was like a lot of last appearance was this one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, which I printed out some stuff here. A lot of stuff that I didn't even really, I didn't remember or didn't know. But if you go, I was watching this stuff, the pay-per-view again on the network. They don't have any of the superstars or primetime wrestling from this time frame which I thought was kind of weird. And they don't have any wrestling challenge episodes on there, which I couldn't believe. I don't know what the deal is with that.
Have you seen him? I didn't look for it after we talked about it, Wes. I didn't go back and look, but
I was working on.
Go ahead.
I was working on Saturday and needed something to watch, so I found like an episode of Superstars of Wrestling. It was actually the day before the Rumble '92, and they had mainly a bunch of jobber matches on there. There wasn't really anything. I mean, I was just curious what else was going on. I know that there was an awesome promo that I told Garrett to watch with the Legion of Doom, where Hawk told the natural disasters they needed to eat more salad. That was freaking amazing. Like, I just love that.
Well, this is actually funny because there's a couple things in this. Some of Heenan's comments in this Rumble is actually quite.
Oh my god! Yes.
It would
actually.
Yeah. You wouldn't get away with it nowadays.
I actually wrote down a few of my favorite Heenan quotes from this Royal Rumble. Because there were.
You have the Virgil one in there, by any chance?
You bet your ass I did. You bet your ass I did. I laughed for a good half an hour at that one.
Oh my
no
God.
way that would fly today. No way that would fly today. Oh my God.
Was this I don't remember. Was this the one with Typhoon as well? I don't know. We'll get there, but there was another funny one. I'm not sure if it was this Rumble or the year after. He had a nice Typhoon comment as he was running into the ring that I never forgot.
Must have been next year.
Yeah, Heenan wasn't around much longer after that. Was he? He may have announced 93, but that was probably the last one.
He stayed to the end of 93, so he was there.
Okay.
Because Royal Rumble 93 was when. Because Rumble number 93 was when Luger came in. And he was like orgasming over Luger, his body and everything.
I was just so
out of that is right. Yeah, the narcissist strut. Yeah, I didn't even know how to pronounce that for the longest time.
For Luger, that narcissist promo was the best.
He had the worst freaking theme music ever, though. Do you remember that theme music?
Kind of romantic, yeah.
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 Do you guys remember if you watched the show live, the Rumble 92 live?
I did.
I don't believe I did.
It's a funny story. My uncle had passed away 2 days before. So when the show was on, I was at the wake for my uncle. So I didn't.
No way.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Today's the actual anniversary, 29 years. Yeah.
What do you mean you were watching it at the wake?
No, I wasn't watching it at the wake. I was going to, but since he passed, I couldn't.
Yeah. I thought you said you were watching it at the wake.
But my friends, but my friends would come over and would tell me like what was going on, like Piper winning and.
Oh really?
Stuff. Yeah, so I knew.
You're supposed to be grieving, and you're getting inside news on what's
happening. I was 10 years old. They're telling me anything.
It is funny though how our minds were back then, though, right?
Yeah.
Like you sit there and your friend goes,
actually,
Popper just won the belt. Yes.
If only.
I think we have a very similar story, Wes. We kind of brought it up. I think when we were chatting about doing this episode, I remember watching this honestly like it was like yesterday. We used to go to my grandmother's to watch pay-per-views because she had this scrambler box where basically you could like just kind of rip all the pay-per-views for nothing, I guess. So I assume it was probably illegal in some aspects, but so we used to go over there a lot to watch these events. My dad would just bring us over, and I can remember this one specifically. Hurt my brother just watching it because I can remember I was so excited, and we'll get into this about the new foundation. Like I was so amped because I was such a huge Hart Foundation fan. And then when the new foundation came out, I was so excited. And I can remember her betting me like $5 on the match because she told me that Orient Express was going to win. And of course I took the bet, man. So I won my $5. And then she said for another $5, she thought that Rowdy Piper was going to win the Rumble, but obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, I can remember this. Like I can remember exactly where I was sitting and all this when this was going on. So it's pretty crazy.
Well, I actually have memories at my grandmother's house watching this. Well, I listened to this show because it was scrambled, right? And
you watched it through the lines. Wow.
Well, I mean, you could kind of like, you know, I don't know if any of you guys remember how the scrambling was back in the day. You could hear it, but you couldn't really see what was going on. So, I mean, hell, it's better than nothing, man. So I kind of watched this show. I mainly listened to this show when I think I was like 11 years old at the time or something. So, but yeah, I mean, this was a very hopped up Rumble because this was the very first time that it was up until this point, winning the Rumble really didn't mean anything, you know. So this one was for the belt, so it was sort of a really, really big deal, especially for an 11-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Right. Agreed.
So anyway, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. There was a dark match on this show. I did look that up. Chris Walker versus the Brooklyn Brawler. And I think Chris Walker won. I don't know who the hell Chris Walker was.
Did he ever amount to something? Was he another guy?
Unless he was under like another name. I don't know. I can't remember Chris Walker. How about you guys?
Is it better that I would rather watch that than the Bushwhackers match?
We'll get into that. I have a couple things I want to say.
Oh God, dude.
Yeah.
So bad.
Also, too, like this was before, Chris nowadays.
Walker, you gotta look this guy up. I just looked him up really quick. He's jacked.
He ended up murdering somebody.
He kind of looks like that guy that fought Bret that like Vince really liked.
Oh, McGee.
Yeah, he kind of looks like that. His name was the Conan Chris Walker. I wonder why he never amounted anything.
Conan Chris Walker.
Yeah, that's what it says right here. He looks ginormous.
He looks like Texas Tornado,
like Ultimate Warrior kind of with no.
Texas Tornado. Yeah, so he looks like.
He looks like one of the bad guys from Cyborg.
All old up, you know.
Yeah, who was this monster? Why is he not? Where was he?
He must have really sucked if he was that good, and you know, nobody knows who he was.
He was the original Jungle Boy.
Because Vince, you know.
Vince, like, wow.
Speaking of Vince, though, like around this time period too, there were no surprises in the Royal Rumble, like there are, you know, there have been in the last 15 years or so. Like Vince would name every freaking person in the whole Rumble right before, right when it was starting. You know, he's like, the Barbarian. You know,
that's my favorite. Haku.
Haku, yeah, that's another one. Like, I was like, how long was Haku even in WWF? Like, this was 92, but I think he was kind of winding down at that point.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah.
Well, and you could tell, like, you know, some of those guys, he'd be like, the Repo Man, the Warlord.
You could tell
the Hammer Valentine. Like, who the fuck is going to? Yeah.
Conan Chris Walker.
So they were in let's see here, the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York. Is that still there, Freddie?
I have no clue. Probably not.
I just knew you were in New York. I didn't. Sorry.
I'll go that upstate, so I wouldn't know.
Heenan and Monsoon, which to me, like, that was just a perfect combo for you know. Mm-hmm. I think that they would do one more WrestleMania, and then it was pretty much
that was it.
That was it for them. So, but the opening match, we'll go ahead and talk about this one: Orient Express with Mr. Fuji taking on the New Foundation, which Garrett was talking about. He loved their outfits back in the day.
Yeah, I love that. What was that supposed to be anyways? Was that kind of like Bobby Brown? Was it hip hop?
The parachute pants.
Yeah, but what, I don't know what the gimmick, I don't know what it was. Was it supposed to be like kind of funky, fresh, or was it like a clown? I don't know what they were going for.
That was the fashion back then.
I mean, I don't not like it. I like it. But you know, I actually was looking
around. Garrett, I do need to know though. If Chalkline comes out with reproductions of these, yeah, you know, I know for a fact you're going to buy
them. Don't invite me to your weddings because I'll wear one of those blazers with the checkers on.
Also, too, Freddie, maybe you would. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, well, what's kind of funny is that for some reason I was super hyped about this. And as a kid, I almost remember like this being something special, but this was a one and done pay-per-view for these guys. So, which is odd because I can remember thinking like, oh my God, these guys, after this match, I was like, oh, they're going to get the belts. There's no way. Like I was so amped. And then looking back, it was like one and done. And then it was high energy with like the same gear.
Right.
And Neidhart was gone. So, I mean, I don't know the whole story behind that. But what else is interesting is that for a team that didn't last at all, they came out with Hasbro's based on this gimmick, which is crazy that they were able to get toys of this gimmick that lasted like one pay-per-view. You know, it's strange.
There had to be something going on with Neidhart because Neidhart looked really off to me in this match. Like even when he walked out the curtain like he was like he walked into a dream or something. He was like,
out of his mind.
So and then most 90% of the match is the Orient Express beating the crap out of Owen and with Neidhart on the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it looked to me like something.
Yeah, I don't think he lasted much longer. I know he had like substance issues for a while, but I don't know if it started way back then or what. But I was going to ask Freddie this. Maybe he would know this. He left for WCW like not long after he got fired from WWF. Am I just imagining things? But I'm thinking he wore the same ring attire in WCW at least for a little while.
Yeah, he did when he came in. Yeah.
That's weird. That's weird because you think of Neidhart and you're like, why would he want to wear this gear? Like it almost didn't look like it made sense for him. And the fact that he'd like wear it to another company is interesting.
Maybe it was just comfortable to wear.
What else is?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure it's comfortable for sure. But like he went back to the Hart Foundation attire though. So the reason I'm asking this is because I cannot find anything on YouTube or whatever but I'm thinking for sure that he wore the same, the crazy taxi outfit or whatever.
Yeah. I think the first couple of times he did, and then he reverted back to the singlet outlook. So,
well, it's funny because I listened to an interview with Natty not too long ago. I don't remember where I listened to it on a podcast or something, and she says she still has that jacket, that blazer with the checkers on it. Yeah.
So if Chalkline wants to scan it or do whatever they want to do, they can.
She's got it.
Make some new ones.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, the Knickerbocker Arena is still up. It's the Times Union Center now, though.
Oh.
It used to be the Pepsi Arena in Albany.
Something else is weird too because I didn't really think about this. So there was Kato in the Orient Express, and there was Sato. Right. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I was thinking that Sato just decided to wear a mask. After a while, I was thinking it was the same freaking guy.
He just decided. No, Kato when he came out was like so jacked. He was like jacked to the gills, and then in this one he didn't look that good. Like he must have been like, dialing it down or something. And Tanaka looked like he was on his way out. I mean, he had like a full karate outfit on, and he looked tired and stuff. So I'm assuming this is probably tail end for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tanaka had he was completely covered up. Like he had pretty much like a karate gi on or whatever.
Yeah.
But Paul Diamond would be in the Royal Rumble the next year as who?
Max Moon.
Yeah, there you go.
I remember when he debuted, I swear, like I was amped up seeing him on Superstars. I thought it was like the coolest thing. And he was like he had a different, I swear to you, and again, I almost imagine like his name wasn't Max Moon when I first saw him. It was something else. Did he have a different name?
It was the I think it was like the Kamikaze Kid or the Comic Kid or something like that.
Oh, Comic Kid, yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
I think that might have been like his first match on Superstars, and they changed it real quick. Yeah. Now, I know Conan was supposed to be that gimmick. Did he ever actually come on TV as was he Comic Kid, and then when he left, it became Max Moon with Diamond, or did he never even make it out there?
He did Superstars, didn't he?
Yeah,
so
he was
probably Comic Kid. Yeah,
I think he did Max Moon for at least a match or two. I think, right?
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, there's pictures of him for sure with the outfit on. What I'm wondering too, like I can't remember. I know Owen Hart was the Blue Blazer like a couple of years before this. Was he doing anything at all before they put him with Neidhart?
Wasn't he in WCW?
Actually,
He was in WCW, wasn't he?
Yeah, he went to. I think he was in WCW between WrestleMania 5 and then this.
Okay, so but like as far as WWF, they just brought them in
No.
as a tag team.
I think he went to Japan also. So, and then he came back.
It was really weird too because like they fired Neidhart and then just got Coco Beware in there and they completely changed the name. But they gave Coco just a different color version of that fucking pajama outfit, you know. So, New Foundation won that match, which, I mean, if I was a betting man, I don't know. Like, at that point in time, I guess you wouldn't want to bet on the Orient Express, but who knows? It could have been a toss.
Well, you figured the newer team would win, right?
Yeah, you would think. I think she was stuck in her way.
Yeah, and I can't remember the Orient Express ever really winning a match either. But that's not to say it didn't happen.
I don't either. It was always funny because they'd always like open the show like they were gonna win.
They were trying to do like a Rockers Orient Express 2 here, and it didn't really work out. But it was still a good match.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess that brings us to the Popper Mountie Intercontinental match, which originally was going to be it was Bret Hart versus the Mountie, but they remind us about 97 times during this show that Bret Hart lost to the Mountie because he had a temperature of 102 degrees.
Bullshit.
And yeah. Which,
what happened?
I mean, it's interesting.
Imagine now.
Oh, they wouldn't even mention it. Yeah.
They couldn't even tell you. They couldn't even bring it up.
They would still let him come out there.
You would have a neck injury or something like that.
Yeah.
They can't use like, oh, he lost.
It's dangerous to have.
He might have COVID. We don't want to say that.
The whole federation would be shut down. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's I was talking to Garrett about this too earlier. The whole thing with Bret Hart is I think that he was negotiating with WCW at the time.
Yep.
And that was the big rumor because they were trying to get him to go on TV with the Intercontinental title or something like that.
Yeah, they're trying to get revenge on the Ric Flair situation with the belt when he debuted it. But what happened was he thought his contract had ended, but it rolled over another year without him knowing about it. So he was still in the company. He couldn't go anywhere anyway. So,
but that's kind of interesting that they would treat him so good after that, considering he was ready to like bounce with the title. In one sense, right? And then it didn't work out, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we'll give you the belt back, and then you'll be like our top baby, like in like a year.
He was essentially the main event of SummerSlam too later on that year.
You know, so it was like it was just kind of weird that he was ready to make a move like that, and then was almost still treated so well for a long period of time. You'd figure like nowadays someone's about to do that, and it's like they're done.
Yeah,
right.
But yeah, they filmed the house show match, I guess, where the Mountie had beaten the Bret Hart for the belts. And then I remember as a kid, I was totally confused why they would give the belt to, I always kind of liked the Mountie, but he never really seemed like anybody that should have a championship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the Mountie. I always thought it was a kind of a cool gimmick. I mean, as far as having the belt, I was okay with it at the time. Like I got it because he was kind of new. Like the gimmick was relatively newer at the time, so I thought maybe he was just getting a good push. But this was after. Wait, where am I? My time. This was after he went to jail, right? Or no?
Yes.
Okay, it was. All right. Oh yeah, that was 91.
91. Yeah, SummerSlam 91. That was the jailhouse match.
And then I guess Popper was pretty much helping out on announcing duties and stuff like that. He wasn't even really wrestling that much around that time period. So it seems like they almost kind of threw that together pretty quick. And then, but it led, I mean, Popper, of course, won the championship and held it to Mania. And the Bret Popper match at Mania was like a classic for sure. So, I mean, I guess it all worked out for him. And I don't know if
that was the reason they gave him the title to begin with, because they wanted to put over Bret. And he wanted to do it himself. He figured the only way Bret will get ahead would be to be a main eventer. And so,
I mean, it's definitely a better match than Mountie Bret
Right,
at
right.
SummerSlam or whatever, or at WrestleMania or whatever. Remember the promo they had like at Mania? We went bye bye, bye bye.
There was like, did you notice some of the edits on this show too? Though, like they were half of the show they edited out WWF, and then it's almost like the other half of the show they didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like I always like,
whatever.
yeah, and then oddly enough too, like it was I think it was a Coliseum video version of the event.
Yeah.
Because they had Lord Alfred Hayes going back and forth saying he was with the Coliseum video or whatever. So another thing that I was pissed about, this next match that's coming up too, Bushwhackers with Jameson.
Oh, I love it.
I forgot Jameson existed.
I saw him and I just wanted to turn off the show. I was just like, oh no, not this show.
I was looking up like trivia on this too, and it says on IMDb the only WWF appearance for Jameson Winger, and I was like, he had a last name? I don't remember that at all.
Why would they?
So his last name
was
Winger.
That upsets me. I'm offended.
No wonder I was headed for a heartbreak.
The thing that I was so pissed about in this match is they edited the Beverly Brothers theme music off. So they had some sort of generic. The Beverly Brothers had some kick-ass music, I thought, back in the day.
They did.
So, but yeah, the Bushwhacker. I can't really remember too many events pay-per-view events where the Bushwhackers actually had a tag match. To be honest with you, but this was one of them. Did you guys enjoy this? Yeah, it was. They were using up quite a bit of time.
They used up a lot of time. There was one of my favorite quotes happened during this match too. It wasn't it was a Gorilla said it though. He goes, "The Bushwhackers have been licking and whacking their way through the roster." Like, really?
And I don't know if it was this event, but there was something I was watching. I don't know. I watched. So the Jameson thing is what kind of prompted me to talk to Wes the other day about. I was a huge fan. I remember Primetime Wrestling when it went to that studio. I loved that. So I went online to see if they had it on the network. They have one episode from that studio on there for some reason. I don't know why. And I watched it. I think it was yesterday. It's a trip, man, to watch that because the people in the audience, it's crazy. You've got like kids, then you've got like hillbillies, like dressed like hillbillies, but then you have like a lot of people in like business suits. And like there's like they almost look like they just got off like work at Wall Street and came to this event. And there's like a guy in a business suit with like a neon rockers hat like in the front row. Like it's just a very interesting time, right? And you can obviously tell that they're told who to boo for and who to cheer. Flair comes out and like everybody in the arena is like booing him like no other. I'm thinking to myself, come on. Like Ric Flair makes his debut here and nobody's cited, like things like that. And that's where Jameson, I remember, kind of popped. He was like, that's where I think he was debuted, was in the audience of that televised little studio thing. Cause that's what I remember him as a kid, was he was always there and kind of was like involved in some aspect, like as like this nerdy guy or whatever. But to see him here now was craziness. Like I don't understand it. He was almost like it was so bad. I don't understand how this is like one of those things that they were running with. Like, I got it. But at the same time, it was like, what are they taking? Like, oh, it's Revenge of the Nerds is kind of popular to this, but like it got to a point where it's like he had like tape on his sneaker. Like I didn't know he had a sock hanging out of his like jacket. Like, what was his gift? Like, what was he, like a nerd? But like, why do you look like
he was like a nasty nerd?
Like, I didn't.
A homeless
why
nerd.
He have a sock in his jacket pocket. Like,
Somebody, if you watch the match, somebody in the audience must have asked him, "What's up with the sock?" And he turns and he goes, "Have something to blow my nose." Blow my nose.
And then Genius hits him and he goes, he hit me. He hit me.
Oh yeah.
The weakest slap ever.
Yeah. Well, the thing is about this when the Bushwhackers come out is it's insane to me that how many like they were like licking kids. Like, I kind of remember it, but like at the same time, like you look at it now and like in this day and age, and you're like, how did this even fly back then? Like, they were licking like teenage girls' faces and like kids' heads and stuff. It was super weird, and I just don't know how that was like a running thing that they got away with so many times. Like, I'm surprised there wasn't any, like, there hasn't been lawsuits come out now from like these people on like the network that'll like take this down. Like, this is like assault or whatever. Like, it's just strange, you know.
It was very strange. It was also very, very strange. Yeah. I'd forgotten about that. And like they're just walking through, just randomly licking. But maybe those kids, maybe they were plants and they were related to them. I don't know. They were just like randomly grabbing kids and I mean, like, oh my God, what?
And like, what did they do? Go to Vince? Like, I think we're gonna lick people. Like, that's great.
They did do that. They did do that at signings. They would lick people,
right?
Yeah.
When they would bite other wrestlers on the ass as well.
That was that and that's what always like the when they had like those like midget matches, they would always be like butt biters or whatever. I don't know why that was like the thing.
Didn't it seem too like around this time period and really throughout most of the 90s, like there were always like the Bushwhackers was a team, and really the Beverly Brothers was a version as well, where like they would never really have anything creative at all for them. They were just always there to kind of fill up time. This was pretty much like what you would see on a house show. This match was like a 15-minute, just time filler.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there were a lot of those guys around that time where they just never, I don't think they had one angle the entire time they were there.
No, but you know what's funny is that, like, and I understand it was the Rumble, but you'd always see the Bushwhackers at pay-per-views where at least they were getting time. Like, you look at it now and you think about how many people never see a pay-per-view ever, let alone like a Raw, nowadays. And back then they were like, they were able to kind of find a spot for like everybody, which was very strange. Like, you always saw them at, pay-per-views. Like you said, they never really won, but they were always there, I felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was this event or if it was when I was watching that Primetime Wrestling or whatever the other day. Did they say something where their debut, they found them at Busch Gardens? Was that this event or no? I think like Heenan and like Gorilla were talking. They're like, so don't you remember the first day that we came across the Bushwhackers before they came into the WWF? We found them at Busch Gardens. What? I don't remember this at all. Like,
if I'm not mistaken, like, okay, I may be wrong on this, but we'll have to look this up. It seems like that might be true. That might have happened on an episode of Primetime Wrestling or something like that. Do you remember sometimes they would have like cutaway segments with Heenan and Monsoon, and sometimes they were on location
somewhere, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that may have happened that way, possibly.
I'd love to look that up and find out like their official like debut of how they got into the WWE. Like, was there an angle where they were at Busch Gardens and they found these two guys like there or whatever they were doing there, and like they became wrestlers like the next week? I don't know. Bushwhackers, I think, were there probably. I don't know, when did they start in WWE, because I was probably watching. I always felt like they were there, but I know I probably started watching before they were really there. I don't know.
Must have been like 91, 1991, right?
But do you think that
they like late 80s, early 90s?
They did. They weren't there in like the late 80s.
They were in WCW for a while. Or NWA, I should say. For a while.
It's kind of hard to pinpoint because, like we said, that they were kind of always there, but they never really had an angle or anything that memorable to go back to, So yeah, Jameson gets some sort of revenge on the Genius, who I guess maybe they had something going back and forth there on Primetime Wrestling or whatever. I don't know.
I couldn't care less.
Yeah,
I really could.
But Jameson, though, whenever they moved off of Primetime Wrestling ended and they started Monday Night Raw, you never saw Jameson ever again.
Oh, so
that was kind of it for him.
I remember him on. Remember when like Bobby Heenan did that like late night show for a little while? I think it came on after prime time. It was like almost like a Letterman show, but Bobby Heenan was the host. Remember that? It was called the
Yeah.
Bobby Heenan show.
Yeah, I think
It was
so.
very much almost like a Jay Leno type late night show.
I remember now.
And I remember Jameson being on that, doing stuff. I don't know. I guess those aren't on the network, are they? I'd love to go back and watch some of those.
There's a lot of good, they actually do have some cool stuff on there that I want to check out. They added some of the March to WrestleMania specials on there, and Survivor Series something.
Something like that.
Yeah, Survivor Series Showdown or something like that. Yeah. So a lot of that stuff I haven't seen since it actually happened. So I'm kind of interested in going back and looking at that. But yeah, none of the Wrestling Challenge episodes are on there. Very few Superstars is up there. So, and that was the main two shows for a long time, you know. Next matchup, though, the Legion of Doom versus the Natural Disasters. And this was, I think he had changed from Tugboat to Typhoon not long before this, right? Or am I mistaken?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're kind of a newer tag team at this point. Something else I was thinking too when I was watching this, really, like, the big man wrestler doesn't really exist anymore. There's nobody really wrestling now that, you know, like King Kong Bundy or Yokozuna or Earthquake, Typhoon, those guys. That's kind of missing, you know.
I think it's missing for sure, definitely.
Yeah. So I don't know, for safety reasons they don't allow that anymore or what the deal is, but I think Otis is probably the close thing that they have right now, and he's just kind of a little chunky. He's not, you know, like King Kong Bundy size.
Yeah, it is definitely something I think is missing, because I used to like that in the sense that, like, they would almost use their weight as like an advantage. Like, you know, like they had a splash or they would sit on him as their finisher. And as a kid, I mean, that was devastating to see that, you know, and I don't know why they don't do that anymore. I mean, I know there's some guys, I think even like NXT and TNA and stuff have some heavier set guys, but I don't know. I haven't watched it to know if they like have that similar gimmick where, like, you know, wrestlers can't pick them up and stuff like that, and they hurt their back, and they just are able to almost use that as a gimmick. And a lot of those guys, like Earthquakes and the Yokozunas, like, they were big deals. They weren't just like these scrubs that would always get beat every week. Like, they were put at, like, you know, that they were monsters and they could like beat up anybody. So I kind of like that as well too, because it was just taking the big and not just being big and jacked, but almost taking that other side of it and just being like, this is a big guy. Like, I wouldn't mess with him. You know?
Yeah. They did a little bit of that with the Giants, but, you know, seems like they even tried to get away from that with him there toward the end of his career, where he was just, you know, too big to be slammed, or, you know, like he would step on people's chests and, you know, walk across, you know, the kind of thing. So
yeah, there was a spot in this match here though where Animal had Earthquake up, and I was like, what the hell? Because Earthquake was like, he was like 6'6" or something like that too. So, but then he kind of, you know, the move where he kind of just falls back.
Just falls back.
Animal could have easily slammed him. You could tell. So that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Typhoon and Earthquake were just hell of athletes too, both of them.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, watching the match. Like, as big as they are, they're still pretty fleet of foot, and they can take a slam or they can take a bump and get right back up. Yeah,
Earthquake was doing drop kicks in the match. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought for what it was a pretty decent match. Legion of Doom, they weren't very much longer in the company either. I think they would be out of there by the SummerSlam was the last
with the
show that they did.
It had the stupid dummy on the bike.
Yeah, they found the ventriloquist dummy in the the city dump.
Yeah, Rocco.
It's funny because I feel like LOD, like, to me, I can remember when they were new in the WWF, but it doesn't feel like they weren't there. What were they, only there 2.5 years, maybe? I don't. It seemed like a lot longer as a kid that they were around, but I remember when they were like the new thing, because I don't know if you guys were the same way, but it was always Demolition for a while and then LOD came in, and it kind of like I didn't know them too much from NWA. I remember the Road Warriors like through pictures and magazines and stuff, but when they came in as LOD, it was just like this was like Demolition 2.0, you know, to me as a kid, and I was just like my mind was blown at these guys.
My memory of them in WWF is like just a little blip. You know what I mean? Like they were there and gone. I was far more of a Demolition guy.
Same.
So.
Well, and they really, whenever they brought the Road Warriors in, it was almost like they were going to immediately feud them with Demolition, and they kind of backed off. I don't know if you remember that. Like,
yeah, what
I think it was
ball drop that was.
Yeah.
It was like whenever they first came in.
I mean, that was lined up. That WrestleMania 7 at least was tailor made to just blow that feud off. Because if you look at WrestleMania 7, each of those teams have like the worst possible opponents that's not even through a storyline at all. And you're kind of like, why didn't they just have them two face each other and just blow this feud off? And it just would have made a lot more sense, even on paper, to have them two on it. It just would have seemed like more of a WrestleMania match. Instead, it was Demolition versus the Japanese team that came in, right? And that beat them.
Yeah.
What the fuck was the point in that, by the way? I never did understand that.
I didn't either. And then Power and Glory got completely smoked by LOD. So it's kind of like, why wouldn't you just did the Power and Glory versus the Japanese team and then LOD versus Demolition? Like on paper, that would have just been like another huge, you know, match that everybody would have at least wanted to see. You know, it was just always an odd time for me that they had the opportunity at a WrestleMania and they squandered it with two matches that didn't make any sense.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Well, they kind of did the same thing this year coming up for the WrestleMania 8, which we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But yeah, the LOD Natural Disasters match was fun. And I think too, like there was an interview segment with Mean Gene right before the match. The thing that LOD had as well that really nobody now in wrestling has, those guys look like they could beat the shit out of about anybody. Like they just, you're like, I don't want to mess with those guys. There might be a couple guys. Braun Strowman maybe is one of those guys. I don't know, but there's not many nowadays.
I think Braun looks scarier in person than he might be.
Isn't he afraid of Karen Angle or something?
Yeah.
Or Jarrett, was it Karen Jarrett?
He cried in front of Karen Angle.
Yeah.
Garrett's just going to grab his nipple ring and he'll be done with him. He's like, I'll take you out.
Show him a picture of Karen Jarrett. He falls to his knees.
Yeah, he did. I guess that's what happened. I guess he was like, what was he? He was kind of being rude to her, and she's like, "Yeah, my husband's Kurt Angle," and he started crying.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Don't hurt my push, please.
Yeah. I don't want to be fired. I'm brand new. Poor guy.
I don't want a swap match with Bray Wyatt. Please, don't give it to me.
That's it. You're going to Raw Underground. Okay, fine.
What happened to Raw Underground, by the way? That was just over. Like, it was not that I missed it too much, but I just thought of it.
That whole time frame between Raw Underground and that group, it was like what a big waste of like all that build or whatever the heck. Nobody knows what any of that was supposed to be, right? Like I kind of got out of it around that time, but like neither of those amounted to anything, right?
Well, Retribution's still hanging on.
Yeah,
barely.
It's almost like kind of they're just jobbers now, right?
Ugh.
Yeah, they're on Main Event or whatever.
But it's weird. It's weird that you build this up as like the next NWO or whatever they wanted to do, and all of a sudden it's just like in a month they're all just jobbers.
The Job Squad is more of a threat than these guys.
So strange, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this year's Royal Rumble for '92. Jack Tunney had a rare in-ring appearance on this show. What do you guys remember most about Jack Tunney? He seemed like when he was...
He's no good.
Yeah, when he was in the ring, it was almost like he was scared to death or something.
Yeah.
Like he was getting ready to relieve his bowels right in the middle of the ring.
Somebody in the audience must have been holding up a picture of Karen Jarrett or something.
Well, it's weird because if I try to remember, I talked about this before, like 90, I'm going to say between 90 and like 92 like 92 was probably my peak of like fandom for wrestling. It was like wrestling 24/7, you know, birthday parties with Ultimate Warrior on the birthday cake. Like it was insane at that time of my life. Like that was the time that I was just so obsessed. And I was in elementary school at the time, and the principal for my elementary school, I swear to God, if anybody is watching this that went to Cumberland Hill School, the principal at the time was a guy, and his last name was Lesiak, which already sounds evil enough, right? He was honestly like the scariest person I've ever seen in my life. He would walk into like a cafeteria full of elementary school kids from like 1st to 5th grade, and as soon as he walked in, everybody would like quiet. Like there'd be like not one peep. And as soon as someone like, and there would be a time where someone would be like whispering, he'd walk over to that table and like smash it with his fist, and everybody like, it was insanity. Like nowadays that guy would be like in jail. Like to this day, he's still like probably the scariest human I've ever known in my life. And I was a little kid, so when Jack Tunney, it's a weird transition, but as a kid, when they're like, he's the president, like for me, like I thought president, like top guy, principal, like I was kind of like, was like scared, not scared, but like nervous, like, oh, this guy's the boss, like he means business. But then once you got to an age where you watch it back and you're like, wow, this guy was like the biggest joke. Like as a kid, you're like, oh no, like don't piss off Jack Tunney, like he's gonna make these guys do this. But now looking back, I was like, wow, he was awful. Like he was so bad. It almost like looked like every time he spoke, he would be a deer in headlights reading off cue cards. And the one interview that I really think about is when he had to make that thing about Jake Roberts' snake. And it's almost like someone turned the page, because he was like, and that snake was devenomized by the lab. And it's like, that you don't even speak that way. Like someone was flipping the cards because it just didn't even make sense. And I was just like, wow, what a joke this guy was back then. And I remember as a kid, I was like, you know, super like nervous about him. Like, oh, I hope he doesn't take the title away from this guy. But it's just kind of a weird story how that interlocked with my principal as a elementary
I wonder how long he was the WWF president. It seems like it was throughout most of the 80s into like the mid 90s. But wasn't he really like he was like a promoter in Canada or something like that?
Yeah, Canadian, yeah.
Yeah, and like Vince, it was some sort of favor that Vince, I had him as like a character that would have, he only appeared like, what, every once in a blue moon. It wasn't like, you know, nowadays where they're there every week or something. So
I remember his name being mentioned a lot growing up when I was watching wrestling. Yeah.
Yeah, they used to mention a lot, but like he said, like the appearance was there. So I think that's what also made it kind of, you know, to me, like you'd hear his name, but you'd never see him. And then, but when you saw him, you were like, oh no, like something big's going to go on. He showed up, like this isn't good. You know, that's kind of like, I think the mindset, because it was almost like a figure that you heard about, but you didn't see him a lot unless there was like a big to do on why he was there, you know?
Yeah. And then they put the mic in front of his mouth. He's like, Macho King, Hulk Hogan. You know, it's like, what? No wonder they keep this guy in the shadows.
He went to the Linda McMahon promo class.
He was an older guy too, so I don't know how. I think he's passed away at this point, hopefully.
Yeah, he did.
For his sake. So the Royal Rumble match, something I really love that they did in the 80s and through the mid 90s, right before the Rumble match, they would always have promos from some of the participants and stuff like that. And one of them was Shawn Michaels, who had just turned, like I think it was the week before, just turned on Marty. And it was really his, I guess, debut as a singles act or whatever. So that was kind of interesting to see. And then they were talking to the Hulkster, Sid Justice, I guess. So I guess the pay-per-view started, and Heenan was going on about Flair all fucking the entire show, because wasn't he like Flair's financial advisor or something like that?
Yeah, he was something.
He'd leveraged everything he owned on this match.
Yeah.
On this Royal Rumble, everything was on the line here.
Yeah, and he was just going the entire match talking about Flair. He was like, "Please God, I'll do right from now on," or something like that. You know,
he's so great. This is really his match more than Flair's, honestly.
This really was, yeah. He's like,
so
please let Flair win. I'm sorry for everything I've ever said or done in my life. I'll be better. I'll be a better person. I swear to God. And then Gorilla goes, "I've heard that before."
Oh, there's a moment where Flair's in the ring. He low blows the Undertaker. He goes, "Oh, he's trying to lift the Undertaker up." And we're like, "Will you stop it?
Will you stop it?" Yeah, I love
my one of my favorite to go back to Michaels turning on Jannetty when he throws Jannetty through the window, and Heenan goes, "What an act of cowardice! Jannetty tried to dive through the window to escape." Oh my God!
Even before that, when they start like hugging each other, he's like, "Oh, I knew they would get back together." He turns on him. "Oh, I knew that was gonna happen."
I knew he was gonna do that. That was one of the 2 times as a kid I literally cried. And I remember being on my living room floor in tears when Michaels threw Jannetty through that window.
I remember that live. I was in shock.
I was with the blood. I remember I saw it live too, but the blood was like, "Oh my God, he's killed him!"
Wow,
like that was yeah.
And then what you had like Beefcake like ran off like a coward because he was afraid his face was going to get shattered or whatever.
Hell no.
Well, that was it
like,
for the barbershop too. I think that was the last barbershop segment they ever did.
Yeah.
What a way to go out.
So
no, they did more barbershops.
Oh,
Remember there was one where like Sid went nuts and like had the
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you're right.
He had, like that big
maybe that was the show started though with the first 2 was British Bulldog and $1 Million Man, which $1 Million Man at the time had Sensational Sherry with him. So I wonder if there was anything on the screen where she left Ted DiBiase and went with Shawn Michaels, because this had to be really close to happening at this point.
This was the last event that she was with DiBiase, because I can remember there was like a Superstars as soon as Shawn debuted where she was on and basically admitted that she was like in love with him or something.
Yeah.
And then they didn't really get together right away. It was almost like she became kind of like a obsessed woman, and then finally he like took her as like his valet. But I think there was like a small transition where like she was just obsessing over him, which I think was kind of a cool angle in the sense to get her with him. I thought it was kind of a cool angle.
Plus, he was about to form Money Inc. with IRS anyway, so they had to separate them.
That's right.
Yeah, I think he was starting to wind down too.
Yeah.
So Ric Flair comes in at number 3, and at this point, I think throughout the show, he had lasted longer than any other participant up to that point when he won. So, and Flair was how old in this? He was probably at least in his mid-40s at this point, right?
40s, right? Yeah, I think in his 40s.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Huh.
He's probably like 43, maybe something like that.
Flair's like 70 something at this point, in his early 70s.
Yeah.
So
It's a testament to his endurance. I mean, geez. Even after the match, during the promo at the end, he wasn't winded.
No,
he wasn't even sweating that hard. He was just,
Yeah, no, he did awesome. And it's funny because, you say he's in his 40s and, I kind of believe it, but I always feel like I overestimate ages, especially when I look back at wrestling in this time frame. Like, I'll be like, oh, this guy, like I would have said Earthquake's in his mid 40s, right? Like in my head, I'm looking at him and thinking, oh, he's going to be like in his 40s just by how he looks. But he was like young.
I think it's 20s.
Which is crazy because you're looking at him now and you're like, wow, he's like way younger than I am. Like it's crazy to see. Like I feel like he still looks older than what I look like now. So I don't know. It's just very interesting sometimes because I feel like I overestimate a lot of these guys' ages back then because they just look so much older than the talent you see in there now.
It's like Arn Anderson being 40 his whole life.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Arn Anderson like come out of the womb with like a receding hairline. So
Ole's been 60 his whole life. So
yeah, no kidding.
I don't know what it is about the Horsemen though. Like J.J. Dillon, man, what the hell? Like he has always looked like he was like 50 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, always had that white hair.
Yeah.
It's definitely a weird thing for. I don't know if it's just I don't know what it is. Why people of certain ages look different. Like if you watch the new Cobra Kai, Daniel says, "Oh, I'm how old Miyagi was when I met him," and you look and you're like, "Wow, like that's crazy to think about that."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, continuing on with some of the other participants in here, we'll just go through them kind of quickly. Jerry Sags, no Brian Knobbs, because I think Brian Knobbs was in jail or something, right? Didn't he get stabbed and then go to jail or something like that?
Well, I have no idea.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was. Somebody had mentioned it on one of the threads that where we were posting. We were doing this. There was a stabbing incident, I guess. After some sort of road rage gone bad. So I don't know. I think that Brian Knobbs was actually arrested too. But I didn't really look into it much more than that. But those guys are fucking crazy. I think that they've got some reputations for sure over the years. Haku, this was the last appearance for Haku until like he come back after like what, about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, 2001, I think. Yeah.
Had a
It was
brief
weird to me that
run.
they never called him Haku again though, right?
When he came back, yeah.
WWE,
No, when he came back, he was Haku.
he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Shawn Michaels came in at number 6. It was interesting too when Shawn Michaels first started his singles run because he had some kind of generic. It was before he had the boy toy song, right? And he had a different finishing maneuver too. Didn't he have like wasn't it like some sort of slam or something like that?
Suplex, wasn't it? Something like that?
Yeah, it was kind of like a belly to back, like snap suplex or something like that. I remember that.
Yeah, because I don't know. I'm kind of interested in the shit like that for some reason. Tito Santana came in after that guy. That's another guy.
So
I can't remember one angle they did with Tito Santana ever.
I do.
I mean, I don't know when they were Strike Force.
Yeah, that's the only
when
angle I
Rick
remember
Martel
seeing
turned
him
on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it though.
That
like his entire run, he was there for like 20 years.
That was like around. That was very early when I started getting into wrestling. Like it's just so interesting that sometimes when you think about when you first got into it, like that's when almost the story starts. Like I feel like so them two feuding right after Strike Force is kind of like right when I started getting into it. And speaking of Haku, when I think of Haku, the first like time I remember Haku, he was King Haku for a little while. So that was like right at the beginning of when I started watching wrestling because he was always King Haku to me.
Yeah.
And then I think it was like King Duggan like beat him.
Yeah.
So it's just weird, like to me, like that's kind of how my story with wrestling starts. And then I end up going back and watching stuff back then. But yeah, Tito and Model, like if you would have asked me when I was 6 years old, I would have thought that was like the biggest feud in wrestling because for whatever reason, that must have been like in a magazine I had bought for like the first time or something like that. But what another feud that never really, I felt like never had a blow off. Like had a big event, you know. Anywho,
also though you mentioned King Haku and it just popped into my head. You probably know this already because you still listen to that Major Wrestling Figure podcast.
LJN.
So the original, the LJN Haku figure, right? I had this at one point in time before. I don't want to get into it. The head on the Haku figure, it's got like an indentation for a crown, right? But it never. I guess originally it was supposed to be King Haku. They took the crown and gave it to Hardy Race. So
interesting. I didn't know that there was an indent of his head because I never had that, but I do recall in the magazines seeing photos of Haku with the crown on his head in the magazine photos. I never owned the figure, so that you're saying he never ended up coming with that?
No, it was just a regular Haku figure, and I think they repainted his tights like a Islanders colors or something like that.
That is interesting.
And just made it a regular Haku figure. Yeah. I always thought that was weird because I noticed that whenever I got the figure back in the day, I was like, he's supposed to have something on his head here. But anyway, last appearance for Haku. Tito Santana would stay around. Tito Santana was there for what, another year or two, right? As the El Matador character.
Yeah. He was there a while.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Barbarian and Warlord are both in this, and this was their last pay-per-view appearance for WWF. And on the
No, wasn't Barbarian with the Head Shrinkers for a little bit?
Oh yeah, he was. Sione,
yeah.
yeah, that was a different run though. That was probably that was a couple of years later.
Later, yeah, like 93, 94. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he would go to, I think Barbarian went to WCW for a while too, didn't he?
He went and he came back. Yeah.
Oddly enough, too, on the Superstars of Wrestling show that I watched, that was the day before this, they were hyping a house show, and I thought this was kind of fun. Where who was it? They were setting up a tag match with I think it was, I can't remember the tag team. It may have been the Natural Disasters or the Legion of Doom or something like that. But they had teamed the Warlord and Barbarian up together as a tag team again, which I thought that was kind of interesting. They didn't call them the Powers of Pain or anything. But yeah, I thought that was kind of fun.
They were a cool team, and I always kind of hoped when they changed their gimmicks that someday they would have just kept the gimmicks but been a team again. But we never ended up getting that. But I always thought they were a really cool team. They looked more like the Road Warriors than Demolition did, I always thought.
Yeah. That was the intention, actually, to do that. Before they got the Legion of Doom. Like, we don't need you guys anymore.
Cool name, too.
It was the New Foundation versus the Warlord and Barbarian.
Okay.
So,
that could have been a cool match, actually.
That was another thing, too, they used to do with the shows were like syndicated regionally, right? This one was somewhere in Boston, up there close to where Garrett's at the Boston Garden. So they would and I don't know how the hell they managed this. They would, for regional shows and stuff, edit in, and hype up the shows with promos and Sean Mooney talking about the matches and stuff. So it's kind of amazing that they would do that many times in different areas for different shows.
Mm-hmm.
The Texas Tornado, he was in this event.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was for sure the last pay-per-view he was in.
Sad story, that is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's funny when you watch him run down the aisle, you kind of see him limping.
Oh, I was just gonna say, did anybody ever notice that before?
Not till I knew about it. You notice it once after you know about it. Oh, now I see it, like the limp and the way he moves. It's weird.
How crazy is that though? That he was able to kind of just still work. Like, it doesn't even it still boggles my mind.
It's pretty shocking, yeah, because he was still doing that tornado punch, and he was he was pretty agile for having one foot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you always wonder, if you kept your eyes open, if there would ever be a point in time where that foot would just kind of turn on itself, during the match, and you just never caught it because the tassels were there and stuff like that. And I think that's probably why he had those leg tassels, to kind of just camouflage it a little bit more,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, I think he tried to keep it hidden from the wrestlers as well.
Yeah, he was traveling with the boots on.
Missing that foot. Yeah. Yeah. So, Repo Man was in it. Greg the Hammer Valentine. That's another guy that never really had other than he was in the tag team with Honky Tonk Man. I don't know. They may have had a feud or two there, but they never. Nikolai Volkov.
Vip Valentine. He just came. Wasn't he just in AEW or something?
Yeah, they did. What was it? The Cody Brody Lee match, I think.
So interesting because he just obviously made. Was he just a bigger name before WWE? Because to me, he was always just kind of there. He never really. He
was a long time Intercontinental champion in early '80s.
So funny.
Yeah, it seems like when they had in the big boom period there around WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 2, they had what was it was Johnny V and his group or something with Beefcake and Valentine. They were kind of
the Dream Team, yeah.
Dream Team, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you remember his theme music was it was like a hammer hitting steel or something like that at the beginning. I was like, they're really stretching it, you know. Nikolai Volkov was another one. I was like, in '92, Nikolai Volkov, but he was in it. Big Boss Man, Hercules, which I think at this point in time Hercules was still there, but I think Roma was
out. He was out. He was already out.
Yeah, he was getting ready to. He may have already been in WCW. I don't know, but
is he a Horseman already?
He was
not yet. A year later, he will be.
Oh. I think I was
like they.
when that happened.
I might have Mongo.
No.
Roma, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're not going to diss Mongo now. He definitely he deserved to be a Horseman. Mongo, baby.
Flair used to be Mongo. Like he didn't even like saying it.
I was always curious though, like the little dog that he packed around with him or whatever.
Pepe, yeah.
So random. Like
he must have really loved that fucking dog, man. That's all I
saw that dog. That dog looked miserable. Like, get me off the screen now.
Well, the thing with Mongo,
if I'm not mistaken,
his finisher, like the tombstone, like would you ever let him do that to you?
No.
Like, I'm gonna do the tombstone now. Like, who the hell you are?
No.
I thought the little dog got hit or something like that. It run out in traffic or something. It didn't last very long. Like it was only, it was only on the road for maybe 6 months or something like that.
It got ran over?
I think so. It was while they were traveling or something. It got out of Mongo's arm or whatever. And
do you guys know the Mongo story? Wasn't like, I think Vince wanted him first to be a big star right after the
Lawrence Taylor. Yeah.
They wanted Mongo.
Yeah.
And if you notice around that time, they started doing a lot of angles with Mongo, like as his, like I think he commentated one time and then like got in like a little beef with like one of the guys on the other side. Mm-hmm. They wanted to sign him, and for whatever reason, I don't know if maybe WCW just gave him more money and that's what kind of made him jump over there. But it's just kind of crazy to think that, he was like a hot commodity that WWE really wanted to do something with.
But they brought him in as an announcer, and he was freaking terrible at that point. I mean, it's kind of comical to go back and listen to some of the crap that he would say.
Oh, WCW.
But I just thought that, yeah, in the first few Nitros, especially like the first couple of months he was on there doing it. But anyway, Roddy Piper, Jake the Snake Roberts, which Jake the Snake, I was talking to Garrett about this one as well. He really screwed up, a couple of months later with the whole WCW thing and all that. Yeah. But I would be really interested in seeing where his career would have went had he stayed, because it seemed like they were almost prepping him to be a main event guy with the Randy Savage thing. Yeah, as a heel. And then all that contract stuff started. He wanted out of his contracts and to go to WCW, and that just didn't work out for him. But I would be, I was thinking he was almost ready for a world title run. Jake the Snake was at this point.
Talk about bad luck on his part. I mean, he basically told Vince, like, give me this or I'm jumping ship to WCW. And Vince like, no, go ahead. But what did he say? Like, I think he got out of his contract. He said, okay, well, if you get out of your contract, because I think Vince held him up. He held Vince up for money. Like, I won't perform at WrestleMania if you don't pay me out or something, or release me. But then Vince said, okay, well, you can't have rights to any of your merch going forward or anything or whatever. So then he went to WCW, and the guy who hired him left, or that guy that promised him this big contract left, and Bill Watts, like, was the new boss, like, within, like, the first week. So when Jake went to sign his contract, he, like, I think he gave, like, 1/3 the money or something like that. And at that point, Jake was kind of, like, stuck. Like, he just basically told off Vince. Now he got here, and he's making, like, nothing. So it just kind of sucks, like you said, because he actually was getting a pretty good push at that point as a heel. Like, he was feuding with Savage, which was like a super hot angle. And then he went right to a pretty hot angle with Taker.
Yeah.
And then he also had an angle going on with Warrior that really kind of never kind of closed,
right, Yeah.
So it is, you're right. Like, he was really heavily featured as a heel, and he kind of left that, I think, at a bad time because he was kind of stuck for a while until that heel turn.
There was no finer heel at that time. often.
Oh, yeah.
He's a master at that, man.
Yeah.
Then he did coal miner's glove.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That was
God. Yeah.
that.
As far as promos go, too, he's the best that WWF had at that time. Like, I mean, he was just so good when he would get on camera, and I'm kind of surprised that they're not doing more of that with him in AEW right now. Like, they're not really even using him that well.
Yeah.
Which
What's
I mean,
his
he
role
should
on
just
it?
talk.
What's his role on
He's
there?
he's essentially like a manager for one of the
Martial archer.
one of the guys.
I mean, he talks every now and then, but it's not a whole lot recently.
Yeah. So going back though, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, that's another guy that was there forever and never really had an angle. Erwin R.
Beat
Shyster.
King Haku.
That's about it.
He
That
was
his peak.
King Hacksaw, baby.
That was his
Um,
peak.
Did he have a crown like on his 2x4 or something? Like a little crown on the top?
I think he did.
Probably.
What a goofball.
Interesting thing though about Jim Duggan, and I didn't really even realize this until recently. I don't know when, but there were 2 runs with Hacksaw in WWF in the 80s and 90s. So the time that he got in trouble with the cocaine and all that shit with Iron Sheik, right? So Hacksaw was, and the reason, the only way you can really tell the difference in the runs is, I think the first run he had black tights and white boots, right? So the second run he went to the blue tights with the blue boots. But he had like a good 6 months to a year off from WWF, but I never really even realized that. But it was due to the arrest or whatever with the cocaine. Yeah.
But then he came back when he had like a singlet or something, didn't he?
Yeah, in the
He
90s.
did. That was in the that was the 90s there. That was right before he went to WCW, I think.
Yeah. He was shooting, I think, what Joke was doing, I think, during that time.
Yeah.
Jimmy Snuka, who they didn't really do a whole lot with him either, to be honest
You know
with
what's
you.
funny? I was watching it, and I almost feel like he kind of got booed when he came out, which
He
was very
did. He
odd.
did. He did get booed.
Because he was always like a big baby face that I remember, and then I remember rewatching it, and I'm like, wow, he just got like really booed by like everybody.
They knew what he did.
I knew. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that was why Vince never really pushed him too hard. He was thinking that maybe he'll get arrested or whatever for that murder, and he's like, well,
and wasn't he wearing like
can't
boots and stuff? Like it was like
He was wearing
had, like,
boots.
a weird look at that time.
He was wearing boots. Yep.
It was so weird,
yeah.
He looked coked up. Like, seriously coked up.
yeah.
So next one up was one of Garrett's favorites, The Undertaker.
Tank?
Tanker.
Sick.
So he's kind of in between heel and a babyface at this point. I think he turned full babyface on the Saturday Night's Main Event, which was a couple weeks after this.
Yeah.
Macho Man then run out. Macho Man's still pissed at Jake the Snake, and he essentially eliminates himself at first, and they eventually let him. They let him come back.
No, it's okay. You're good.
Oh no, he must be propelled by someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He
I loved
just
how
jumped
he-
over himself. That doesn't count.
I loved how he like burst through the
Yeah.
he was like shot out of a cannon. He was running. He would have blown away Ultimate Warrior. He was running so fast to the ring. You know what I mean?
You know, that just shows how good Savage was. Like, even like on a match just like this, he's like, you know what? Like, I'm in this crazy angle with this guy. I'm going to make it count. Like, that's what fascinates me about it. Because, like you said, the way he came out, nobody came out like that, really.
Mhm.
So, like, he was just so on fire, too on fire that he eliminated himself. I don't think that's happened. And then, like, remember, so then he said, oh, you have to be propelled out. But then, like, a couple years later, what was it, like, Mil Mascaris did the same thing. It was out.
Yeah, it was out. Yeah.
Jack Tunney rewrote the rules after this match.
Right.
You have to be
Propelled.
propelled by someone else.
Which, I mean, to me, like, he wasn't going to win it anyway, so who gives a shit? Just let him.
No, but they
you
said
can
they wanted
change
him
it
to
on
be
the
the
fly.
final four. They
Final
would have had
four.
like the final
Big
like,
guys. The
main
four
guys would have been
yeah.
him, Sid,
Hogan, Flair.
which I think would have been awesome because it's like you look at those four and you're like, wow, who's going to be? But I think they did a good job because was it Piper maybe? Was he the fourth one?
No, it was Hogan, Flair, Sid, and Savage. And if you think about it, if you split those,
Savage was still in it.
Yeah, if you split those,
I thought he got eliminated again right away.
If you split those four up, those are your two Mania matches: Savage and Flair, and Hogan and Sid. So that's what he did.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
You could have, the Berserker could have took Savage's spot in the Final Four. That'd been fine.
Yeah. I agree.
So, yeah, it was right around this time too. The Berserker tried to kill Undertaker, wasn't it?
Oh, with the sword? Yeah.
You remember that? Yeah, with the sword. Virgil was in, you gotta love Virgil.
Go ahead, Piz.
Go ahead, Piz.
This quote, I almost fell out of my chair laughing. From the brain, Virgil out at number 23. Who knows how many bags he went through in the back?
I can still remember that to this day. I was dying.
Who knows how many bags he went through in the back? Oh my God!
Oh, the shoe comments.
Yeah.
Too funny.
Colonel Mustafa was in this.
I still never understood. That still kind of bothers me to this day that they could. Why didn't they just call him like
Iron Sheik? He's Iron Sheik.
He was already like a made man at that point. Like, talk about taking a star and like downplaying him for whatever reason. Like, you'd figure you wanted to play him up. That always bothered me, and it still kind of does. Like, it's so weird.
He still had those Sheik boots on with the toes.
Yeah, but who didn't know that was Iron Sheik? It's not like he changed his look either. He just put on like a camo shirt. It's so strange.
It was really odd. Yeah.
Like, don't you think if him and Slaughter were a team, it would have made it even like crazier than like to try to pretend it's like a different guy?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, Colonel Mustafa though at this point, like Slaughter was babyface again, right? So what was really the point of Adnan was with him.
Adnan,
but I think
at this point.
They needed a body.
Yeah, but they were like.
Remember Adnan?
Yeah, I don't know.
Scratch your back. Remember that? I used to always think that was funny.
If I'm not mistaken, that dude lived up until just a couple of years ago. Like he was like 90 years old when he passed away.
Wow.
I used to think that was the funniest thing when he was like scratching Hogan's back. Thanks, brother.
The model. Rick Martel, the Hulkster was number 26. Skinner, which was one of my favorites.
I think Brain
called
it, like, as the thing was coming down. Like, could this be Hogan? It was.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He has a history of doing that with Hogan, doesn't he?
Huh?
He has a history of doing that with Hogan, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he? Yeah.
Bash at the Beach.
What's funny was Hogan. Was it just me, or did Hogan get no response when he came out?
No, I think I think
people started they were kind of getting over Hogan at this point.
And at the end of the match, at the very end of the Rumble, the crowd was chanting Justice.
Mm-hmm.
They could care less about Hogan. They were chanting Justice.
What does the network have right now?
There's cheers when he does it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
it was originally booze.
I do remember because when I watched this live, like I said, I didn't really watch it. I listened to it. But the booze for Hogan was, I mean, it was pretty substantial. So whatever they left on the Coliseum video version or whatever's on the network, I'm sure they edited some of it out. So
I just watched it. There was no reaction. Hogan walked out to, it sounded like crickets. He had no reaction.
I remember seeing like different versions of this event on cassette. One like had boos, one had cheers. They like changed it every now and then. I guess when he was in WCW, they would have boos, and then we came back, they put the cheers back in. It was weird.
Yeah, it was very weird. I mean, that's going to be a hot topic at the end of this thing because I can remember that too, and it's just crazy how WWE's just so good at like rewriting history.
How can you even justify that ending anyway? Like, how can you cheer that what he did to Sid?
I know.
I mean, that was a heel move for sure.
Right, exactly.
So, going on Skinner, which You know,
Oh,
I love
God.
Skinner, but there's no chance. No chance for poor Skinner. I think Skinner by next year would be Doink in the Royal Rumble, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. Sergeant Slaughter, number 28. Sid Justice, 29. Let me say this too. Like, you can say what you want to about Sid as far as a wrestler goes or whatever, but that guy is an impressive looking back then. Jesus Christ. There's not too many guys that size that was built like that. I mean, that's just insane.
Yeah.
I mean, he was star. Like, that run with Sid Justice, I thought for a fact as a kid that he was like the next Hogan. Like, at that point with like the blue gear and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, this guy's the guy. And it's sad that it kind of went the way it did. And it seemed like it was all due to politics, really, on why it went that way, in a sense, because I don't know. Like, I looked at him and the reactions he was getting, like, why wouldn't he be your top babyface? Even with like that, he had like that baby blue gear and stuff. He just looked like just like the next thing, It's crazy to see that it just didn't work out that way.
And he was majorly over too every time he came out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, his look too is just this thing. Like, there was nobody that looked like that. That was that big, that was that jacked up. So, and he was pretty good promo too. I mean, he wasn't like he was just convincing, I guess.
Yeah.
So
the whisper, and then he'll scream at you, then whisper again.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you look at Sid though, and what else could you see him being? Like, he just looks like, if you said I'm a pro wrestler, like, you look at him and be like, oh, it makes sense.
That was it. Yeah. Like, you're a wrestler, right? I work at McDonald's. Like, no, I'm a social worker. What? I work with kids. I'm a kindergarten teacher, There was one path in his life, and that was professional wrestling. There's nothing else.
He really did. He just looked like if you were to draw a wrestler, like, that's what it would come out to.
Mm-hmm.
Number 30 was the Warlord that came out with Harvey Whippleman. How many American guys did Harvey Whippleman manage while he was there?
A lot.
I know Sid was next,
and none of them went to did anything. To be honest.
He always had like the low end of the pole.
He debuted with Big Bully Busick. You remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go.
I think that's where he debuted. Jeez.
Warlord looked like he was on roids, like roids and a half. That dude was jacked.
He was jacked to the gills.
I'm surprised he never was more than what he was either.
He actually had pretty good matches with British Bulldog.
Mm-hmm.
He did, yeah.
Back in the day. So yeah, the final four: Flair, Hogan, Sid, Macho, and it ended. Sid eliminates Hogan. Hogan's pissed, brother. He's like, man, what the hell, dude?
Don't work for me, brother.
So, like, he just, assists Flair, I suppose, in winning the Rumble. And people were pissed at Hogan, man. That was kind of a heel move at that point. And then they had to save face, do some edits, play the edited version, which I don't even know if they played any of this on TV. I don't think they did that at that point in time. But all the cassette tapes and stuff, like you said, I think they edited them to be a little bit more favorable to the Hulkster.
Right.
Yeah, they even went back and redid the commentary. Like, so you can find this on YouTube, where they show you the different times where, like, the first one, it was he dumped him out and the place cheered, and then when Hogan pulled him out, they booed. And, like, I forget what the commentary said, but then they had to redo it, because then I guess when they were showing all the replays and stuff, and they piped in the cheers for Hogan, and when Sid threw Hogan out, they piped in all the boos. And I think, like, Gorilla, like, said, like, oh, he snuck up like onto him like a dog or something like that. Like, they had to reword it so it made Sid seem like he did the wrong thing, which, again, it doesn't make any sense, because even Sid said to him, it's every man for himself, big boy, or something like that, and it's just like you said, like, how do you justify what Hogan did? Like, you're supposed to feel bad for him, like, oh, you're supposed to win. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
He won 2 Rumbles before this. Like, why are you so upset? Like, dude, just leave.
well, what's funny too is I don't know if you guys know this, but every once in a while I would tape like Superstars or a Saturday Night's Main Event off TV. And there was one that I had, it might have been around this time, I don't know, but it was a battle royal on one of these. Okay. And to be honest, Greg Valentine won for whatever reason it was. I had it on VHS. And but there was a scene where Tugboat does the same thing. He chucks out Hogan. Hogan turns around, goes to shake his hand, and pulls him out again, like the exact same spot. But they did it with Tugboat. So actually, this had to have been before it if Tugboat was already natural disasters. So unless they were like testing the waters back in that, there was another spot where he does that to Tugboat. And then I think, wasn't there something in WCW where he was like bent out of shape when like Savage threw him out or something? Like he was all pissed. It's like, I don't understand what this gimmick is.
World War III, I think it was.
Like, you're not allowed to throw me out. Like, I don't know. It's just so strange that they keep reworking this type of thing where he acts like a baby, like if he gets eliminated, like fair and square. I don't understand. I don't know.
What's really crazy to think about too, as far as matches go with Sid, during this run, he only had 2 pay-per-view matches. It was the Rumble match and then the Mania match, and then he was done. You know, I guess he would come back as Psycho Sid, but yeah, the Sid Justice where he first debuted, and like you said, he had that really cool look of the metallic blue tots and all that. It was kind of a missed opportunity, I think, because this time frame, I mean, they were kind of 93, 94, 95 era WWF was rough times for sure. They could have definitely used him as a big main event guy.
Oh, definitely. I've heard interviews with him where he said he wanted out of his contract because Hogan was so political back there that he felt like he could never get ahead at that point. Like after Rumble, when Hogan got booed, they said like it was a huge ordeal in the back. Like Hogan was blaming Vince for like making the fans boo him by the way that the angle went out and all this stuff. And Sid was basically like, I can't work like this. Like, there's no way that I'm going to ever amount to anything as a face like Vince wants me to, because Hogan's like going nuts. So I don't know. He says that he got out of his contract because he just couldn't do it anymore.
Plus, you have to remember Warrior was coming in also. So yeah, Hogan and Warrior.
Right.
So he was never going to go anywhere with those two there.
So yeah, that was definitely his missed opportunity for sure.
And this is a weird time frame too, because up to this point, WrestleMania was kind of planned a year ahead of time, like the matches and everything. And it seems like with this one, they kind of just switched it up. Even, some of the promos and stuff leading up to this show, it was almost like they were preparing for Hogan versus Flair, which was the original plan. But I'm wondering at what point in time, I mean, I know they did the Saturday Night Main Event thing and all that. So it might have been shortly after this, which I know that they had some house show matches that didn't go over too well. Yeah, and they had always said that the matches weren't very good either, that they didn't really gel that well together or something. So
which is weird, because in WCW they had a lot of chemistry against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't get it.
It is very strange because even if, like, let's say the matches weren't that great, by name value alone, anything could have worked. I mean, you look back on a lot of Hogan's matches and you're like, yeah, a lot of these matches weren't that great. Like, like him and Bundy wasn't great, but it was just like one of those things where they were able to use the gimmick of the cage. But you put Hogan and Flair on the top of your WrestleMania card. I mean, it doesn't matter what the match is going to be like. That alone is going to draw, I think. And which is super weird because, like you said, it was planned that from the beginning, because when they had that press conference, they're like, oh, the number one contender is Hulk Hogan, which, number one, why was he the number one contender? Which doesn't make any sense at all. Like, if you kind of look at it like, oh, well, you know who should be the number one contender? Maybe the guy who was second at the end.
Right.
Yeah. Because, or maybe the guy who got pulled out by someone who wasn't even in the match at that point would have got it. But they were like, oh, Hogan. So you could tell that they weren't going there for a second, because it would have it didn't make any other sense otherwise on why he was the number one contender. And then it just kind of all of a sudden swapped, which is fine. I mean, I liked Savage Flair, but it just sucks because I feel like that was the time it needed to happen, and things happened and we never got it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it was the first time too, though, where WrestleMania had that double main event. Right. Because they had the Savage.
Silly in a sense too. Like Hogan should have let Flair and Macho have that spot. You know what I mean? Like That's
Right.
the draw.
Yeah, especially considering that the Sid Hogan match wasn't much. Really.
Yeah, but they wanted Warrior to come in. That was the main event part, I guess, the
Yeah.
ending. So
Yeah.
they didn't get to the ending.
And I was there, by the way, if you guys don't remember, but it took me forever to figure out who the fuck the Ultimate Warrior was, because in that big ass Hoosier Dome, you couldn't hear the music really. And I saw a guy running, but of course, he was deflated Ultimate Warrior. He was a lot smaller, had short hair.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was so happy when
that was Ultimate Warrior.
That was another Ultimate
another guy. Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that was Warrior 2.0.
Warrior died. This is some other dude.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I did cry at that point when I heard that story as a kid too.
That was actually Conan Chris Walker who played Warrior 2.0.
That's why
Chris Walker with face paint.
Like, you're gonna be the next Warrior because that one's dead. Like,
well, yeah, because all that started right after WrestleMania 8, because all these kids were like, well, you know that's a different Ultimate Warrior. The real one died. So, but yeah, man, the Royal Rumble 92, though, like, I have fond memories of watching it. Well, kind of watching it live, listening to it. But it was a great Royal Rumble match. I mean, it may very well be the best one. I mean, there were some other good ones, but yeah, this one's probably the most memorable, I think. The speech with, and the speech at the end is legendary with Flair and, perfect. And Heenan.
Right out.
Yeah.
I always remember that. I was waiting for it tonight. I was like, where is it? Where is it? There you go.
You have to take your hair off. You have to take your hat off to Flair for lasting that long and, being able to do anything. Was it over? He was in there over an hour, and it wasn't like he spent big chunks of time like on the outside or in the corner resting. He was in the mix for most of that. So I mean, you got to take your hat off to him. And again, at the end there, when he was doing that promo, he wasn't winded. He really wasn't even sweating. He was like,
And that might have been one of his. I think that's definitely his best promo in WWE, no doubt. But that could have been one of his best promos ever. I think. It was so good, and considering he just got done doing all that and go back and doing it, like it was just such a great promo, and it was a great way to end that pay-per-view for sure.
Well, and even though he'd gone an hour afterwards, they partied all night. That he probably slept with 3 different women that night.
Yeah, because how many did he end up sleeping with?
20,000, 30,000.
Yeah, I think that's what he said. Yeah,
I believe
50,000.
I believe
it. Flair wasn't really in WWF this long either. Like a couple of years, 2.5 years, maybe.
He left in '93, early '93.
Yeah, I think it was. He was there maybe in the fall of '91, maybe. So yeah,
fall '91 to January '93, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't really have that long of a run there either, as far as in his prime. This was when he could really, really go. So, but yeah, I mean this time frame, I've always. 1990 through 92 is, and we were talking about this too. It's just I guess it was just around the age that I was really, really getting hardcore into wrestling and getting old enough to really follow everything that was going on,
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because I think we're all relatively, I think we're all around the same age basically. So yeah, exactly. Like 90 to 92 was just. Man, I can just remember being on the bus and like just talking about it with kids and being in school, and we trade magazines with the kids, and it was just such a big deal back then to me, and it was just like it's all I thought about. The Hasbro figures were out, the WCW. I was so big into WCW at this point too. Like the Galoob figures were out, and so seeing like Flair and Lex and Sid like jumping over to WWF was so like mind blowing to me, because I was such a big WCW guy too. So to see those guys kind of going over there, it was just crazy. Like that whole era was just so crazy. And I can remember watching, which again, I'll say I love the pay-per-view just because I think it's just that time frame. But I can remember watching the pay-per-view where Lex won the belt, where it was supposed to be him and Flair. They had to like shoehorn Wyndham in there. That to me was always one of my favorites, because I can remember watching that at Grandmother's 2 live, and I just thought it was awesome that Lex won. But when you go back and watch it now, man, the fans shit all over that match the whole time, saying we want Flair and all this other stuff. And as a kid, I never really realized that that's when he jumped over. But yeah, that whole time frame was just so special at that time. I don't know. I can't even tell you why it was. I think, like Wes said, it was just the age that I was at.
Well, and it dawned on me throughout the entire thing how great Bobby Heenan was. Like you do not have announcers like that. You've not had announcers like that in years.
No, you're right.
And Heenan was so good on his toes. Just, he was so good. Fair for Flair. How many times did he say that during? It's not fair for Flair. It's not fair for Flair. I loved how he kept trying to get people to go back and find out what number Flair was. Like he said, "Hey kid, you're $5." And of course, Gorilla's like, "No, you can't do that. He works for me. He works for me." and then there was some point toward the end where he goes, "I need water. I need water. Hey, stupid, go get me water." Like he just yelled at somebody, "Hey, you stupid, go get me water."
He was, man. It was. You're right. I mean, there's never been anyone like him, and I knew that they really thought the same because, like we were talking about earlier, is they tried to get him on like a Tonight Show. Like they thought he was that good, and it just kind of sucks. And I don't really know the reason, but why he kind of left the way he did. It just kind of was almost like a kind of a shitty ending for such a great career that he had with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the pay-per-views too with him and Monsoon. I mean, those guys just work so well together.
That's my favorite team, actually. They'll both together.
Yeah. Because Monsoon was such a great straight guy and such a great kind of that face announcer that you could just bounce anything off of him, and he would have how he didn't crack up at a lot of that stuff is mind blowing. Of course, and he'd had his "Are you blind?" Or he'd have like
they would. And they bantered back and forth like during the match too. That it was just so entertaining, instead of just kind of just calling the moveset and this, that, and this. Because in reality, like, who was Gorilla the play-by-play? Like, I mean, I feel like it's not the same play-by-play as like a Jim Ross would be, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was different time for sure.
Both kind of color commentators in a way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because there's still some stuff that I almost feel like I learned as a kid about wrestling and stuff like an anatomy and all that through Gorilla that you never hear things anymore. Like he used to say, like in the breadbasket, you never hear anybody say that. The solar plexus, never hear that said anymore.
Oh yeah,
There's all these words
I think
that
he
used to
invented
say,
that
and I
one.
remember like that's how I kind of like learned like body parts in certain ways, like. But you never hear that same terminology like used anymore.
And what was great about them was they would put themselves over while putting the wrestlers over. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's really hard to do.
Right.
And they both mastered that.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool.
Yeah. No, there were a lot of great announcing teams, but I think that those two together, it's hard to beat. Like I like McMahon and Ventura as well together. They were good. Yeah. There were a lot of pretty good ones around this time frame. So, but yeah, I mean, the Royal Rumble 92, almost like an end of an era type show and the beginning of a new era in a way, like we were saying. What would you guys think about it as far as greatest Royal Rumble? I'm not talking about the Saudi Arabian one. That was bad.
So it's a close second to that one, I think. But yeah, I would say, I would say if it's not, I honestly. What would you say would be a one that's even closer, better?
I wish we could mention the one where we can't talk about one.
See, like I don't remember that one too much. I should probably go back and rewatch that. Do they show that one?
That was
still on network.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good one. Was it the Big Show the last guy in it? With him?
The whole
I don't remember where I was watching that. I was at my friend Eric's house, but I just kind of forget, like, about it. Like, there's nothing that, like, stands out in my head of, like, big things that happened during that.
There was the one where it may have been I think it was the 96 Rumble with when Shawn Michaels won. That was a really good one.
I always liked that one, too, personally. I don't know if it was just, again, I was kind of, well, I guess I can say that. I started getting back into it about late 94. And this is like kind of when Shawn Michaels started to turn babyface. So, yeah, I always kind of liked that one. That's the one where Vader wore his suit backwards or whatever when he had his debut.
The Headhunters were on that show. I think it was their only
Samoan
WWF
SWAT team or whatever.
televised.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember like
They didn't have
eliminated one, and then he was walking back, and the other one was coming down, and the other guy just said, "Oh fuck it, we'll go back too." They both went back.
yeah.
Like he just decides he's gonna go back now.
They would have like random people that would show up too, like Eddie Gilbert was, or no, what wasn't Eddie Gilbert? Was it Eddie Gilbert?
It was. What was it?
It was
Dory Funk was one.
He had like the chicken dance music. Remember he came out to
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing about the Rumbles these days, the only thing people care about the Rumbles these days is like who's going to be the mystery, who's going to be like the three mystery guys who they're going to bring back from, that's like all people seem to care about when it comes to Rumbles.
And that's really like that's all I care about. I can tell you that now, and I think because it's so predictable now, I think that's a problem. Like if you look at '92 and this thing was like the title was on the line, and you look at those final five, like Piper, Macho. Piper had just won like that first belt, which is like, oh, he can make history and win 2 titles in one night. So it kind of like almost raised the stakes a little bit on him. Then you got Savage, Hogan, Sid, who was like brand new, and he was just as hot as Flair was. And you're looking and you're like, oh shoot, who's gonna win this? Like it.
Right.
There was a lot of stories there. Like Flair could have won it because it's like, oh, then he would have been the longest from number 3. So there was just so much going on where now it's like you ask me who's gonna win, and you can pretty much guess out of like 2 people who's gonna win it. And I think that element of it is kind of gone, is that they just have a tough time building stars that they might build someone to an extent, but not someone you think they're going to actually pull the trigger with, and I think that's kind of where my biggest issue is. It's too predictable now.
Well, I'll say this. I think the 92 Rumble, it might be the greatest, but honestly, I think it's the most memorable Rumble because so much stuff happens in this Rumble that, I mean, the other Rumbles have great moments, but I think this one from beginning to end, exactly every beat that goes down.
Right.
So
there was some good ones where there was a good one where Austin won. Like, again, it's weird because I've rewatched it and I was like, actually kind of sucks. But the one where he won the first time where he would like sit on the rope and like look at his watch.
97.
Like to me, that was like at the time, I remember how awesome that one was and how amped up I was. But when you go back and watch it, like they had a lot of those like AAA guys in there and stuff. So there was like a lot of talent that like, and they had like the fake Diesel and stuff in there. Like there was a lot of like talent that you kind of like, eh. But then like the next year, remember there was one year where I think Austin won again, and like the goal was like they were like hunting him for money.
Yeah, the bounty, bounty on him. Yeah,
that was a pretty good one too. I thought that one of those ones was pretty good.
Like Man, Wayne,
that
one.
Yeah.
For some reason, when the Attitude Era started, like I can't hardly remember any of those Rumbles. I don't know what it is.
Those
to me, the first.
Oh,
yeah, I don't know. I may need to go back and rewatch if we do another Rumble at some point in the future. Maybe do one of those because it'd almost be like watching it for the first time or something. Because I don't remember from like I guess starting in like 98, 99 and onward, they kind of get blurry for me.
Yeah, and they definitely get blurry for me as they go on. But I think one of the ones we could probably touch upon, which is still kind of fun in the aspect, is it's not quite Attitude Era yet. It's still kind of like new gen, but it's starting to fade in. Was that one where Austin won for the first time? I think it was like Michael Sid for the title in like San Antonio.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good event, I think. It was just a really interesting time because it was that like transition from like new generation to Attitude, which is like we said about this one, how you kind of have that transition. It's an interesting watch, I feel like, because it's a lot like that. Like you had like Mark Merrow and then like Goldust, I think were 2 big stars at the time, and they were just kind of starting out. So that'd be a pretty cool one to do.
Yeah, for sure. But it was fun, guys. Hell, this is the first one of these that we've done in about 5 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's the first one we've had Pizzelle on in way longer than that.
Yeah.
I think Piz got out of the game. Like even he tapped out before we did, as far as the modern wrestling stuff.
Yeah. I've been out for a long time.
I don't blame you. To be honest, I really don't.
It's just habit.
Yeah, it's not very good.
It's a habit. Yeah, but it's a habit.
Yeah.
It is. It's that's really all it is, because it's Monday and it just feels like I should be watching it.
Watching Raw, yeah.
And then I'm fast. I don't ever watch it now until it's about 45 minutes, so I can start fast forwarding. You know.
Smart.
And I'm finding myself fast forwarding through pretty much 90% of it anymore. I think SmackDown is a little bit better.
It is better, yeah.
But Raw is really bad.
But yeah, it was cool hanging out with you guys again. It's cool seeing Freddie again, and hanging out with Garrett and you, Wes, and talking wrestling. It's been a while.
Just seeing you too, man.
Yeah, man. We'll definitely. Hopefully, we can. Yeah, we can do it again. And like I said earlier, Pizzo Well, as Uncle Bill used to call them, Pizzo sort of a big deal, and it's good to get him on here now to talk stuff we don't normally talk about. Like, we talk about horror all the damn time. So yeah, it was good to have all you guys back on here for sure.
Yeah, it was great seeing you guys. We'll have to get something else going. Like, keep wrestling, not wrestling. We'll figure something out. Do something.
Should be like a monthly thing, man.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe every month, every other month, something like that, and get together and pick a show or something. It'd be fun.
Yeah,
definitely.
All right, guys. Well, you all have a good night, and we appreciate everybody checking this out. I'll put a link to everybody's stuff down below. So if you guys want to check us out individually and all that, you can do that. But you all have a good night, and appreciate you guys joining me again.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for inviting me, dude.
yeah.
See ya.
Have a good one.
You all take care.
Later.
See ya.
See you, Wes.
Later, man. Take it easy.